A puppy, left for dead in a clearing, had been abandoned. But a stray cat was about to do something no one could have predicted. The ginger cat, known to the park rangers as Zeca, was a creature forged by survival. He was perched on a large moss-covered boulder, his orange fur glowing in the afternoon sun as he surveyed a clearing deep in the heart of West Virginia's Monongahela National Forest. The air was crisp, scented with pine and damp earth, a comforting aroma for the solitary feline who roamed the woods near the small town of Hopeville. This forest was his kingdom. Zeca knew every hidden hollow, every bird's nest, and every spot where a careless picnic might yield a forgotten treasure. Only the day before, this very clearing had buzzed with the joyful noise and the savory smell of grilled meat from the local community chapel's annual picnic. Zeca had watched from a distance with his amber eyes, ever vigilant for an opportunity. He had learned long ago to wait patiently until the humans dispersed before moving in. After the celebration ended, all that remained were the ghosts of their presence: trampled grass, discarded paper plates, and the tantalizing, lingering scent of hot dogs and hamburgers. With silent pause, Zeca leaped from his rock and began his patrol along the edge of the clearing. He found half a hot dog bun, a few stray potato chips, and a small piece of fried chicken, which he devoured instantly. It wasn't a feast, but it was enough to dull the edge of his hunger. Just as he was about to move on, a faint whimper cut through the forest's quiet hum. It came from deeper in the woods, the sound of a small animal in distress. Normally, Zeca would have ignored such a call. In the wild, there was no room for the weak. But this particular cry, so desperate and frail, stirred a flicker of curiosity and a forgotten ember of compassion. He decided to investigate. He moved low and slow through the undergrowth, his body a silent orange shadow. The scent of the troubled animal grew stronger. It was a dog. A puppy. Rounding a thicket of bushes, Zeca finally saw it. A small German shepherd, no more than a few months old, hopelessly entangled in a thorny thicket. Its coat, which should have been a handsome black and tan, was matted with mud and leaves. The puppy's eyes were wide with a mixture of terror and confusion. As it struggled, its whimpers sharpened into yelps of pain, the thorns digging deeper into its soft skin. It was clear the puppy was lost, separated from its owner, and utterly helpless. Zeca watched for a long moment, his expression unreadable. He could easily have turned and walked away. This fragile creature was just another casualty of the wild's unforgiving reality. But something held him back. Perhaps it was the puppy's vulnerability, the pleading look in its eyes, or a distant memory of his own kittenhood, before he had become the hardened survivor he was today. For reasons he couldn't explain, Zeca knew he could not abandon the little one. Cautiously, he approached and let out a soft meow, a sound he hadn't made since he was a kitten himself. The puppy stopped struggling and looked at him, its tail giving a timid wag. With great care, Zeca used his paw to push away the brambles that had ensnared the dog's leg. The puppy yelped once, but it seemed to understand he was trying to help. Once free, the little dog collapsed in exhaustion and gave Zeca's paw a tentative lick of gratitude. The cat recoiled slightly, unaccustomed to such affection. Looking around, Zeca found no sign of the puppy's owner, no lingering human scent. It had been lost for some time. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, the temperature dropped. The puppy shivered, huddled beside Zeca. Despite his preference for solitude, the cat did not move away. He could feel the puppy's fragile body tremble. Deep down, Zeca knew it would not survive the night alone. He looked back toward the clearing, and beyond it, to the distant lights of Hopeville. He knew the dangers of the human world: speeding cars, aggressive dogs, and people who had no love for stray animals. But he also knew the puppy stood no chance in the wild. In a surprising act of mercy, Zeca decided to lead the dog to town, where it might find help. It was a gamble, but one he felt compelled to take. Slowly, he began to walk toward the edge of the woods, the weak, limping puppy struggling to keep up. The night filled with the sounds of the forest: the hoot of an owl, the rustle of unseen creatures in the leaves, the distant howl of a coyote. The puppy whimpered, pressing closer to Zeca's side. For the first time in a long time, the cat felt a weight of responsibility he had never expected to carry. Fate had brought them together. Two unlikely souls, bound by desperation in a world that had cast them both aside. At dawn, as pale light filtered through the canopy, Zeca awoke stiff and hungry. The puppy was curled beside him, its head resting against his fur, its breathing shallow and uneven. Zeca nudged it gently with his paw. The little dog blinked its eyes open and let out a weak whine. Knowing they couldn't linger, Zeca started back on their path. The puppy, on trembling legs, struggled to its feet and stumbled after him. The journey was slow and arduous, over rough terrain littered with fallen logs and sharp rocks. While Zeca moved with the easy grace of a seasoned woodsman, the clumsy puppy fell with nearly every step, crying out each time. Zeca's patience was wearing thin, but he couldn't bring himself to leave it behind. His own hunger was a persistent ache. He hadn't eaten a real meal since the picnic scraps. His keen eyes scanned the area, and soon he spotted a field mouse darting through the brush. With a swift, silent pounce, he caught it, ending its life with a single bite. He devoured most of it, the small bones crunching between his teeth. Then, noticing the puppy's hungry gaze, Zeca hesitated for a moment before pushing the last of the mouse toward the dog. It wasn't much, but the puppy gulped it down, its tail wagging faintly as it licked Zeca's paw in thanks. In that moment, the cat realized with a jolt that he was beginning to care for this creature's well-being, a dangerous feeling for an animal who had only ever relied on himself. They pressed on, but the puppy's condition was visibly worsening. Its fur was dull and matted, its eyes sunken. It was growing weaker, barely able to walk. Zeca knew if they didn't reach the town soon, the little dog wouldn't make it. Thirst became a pressing issue. With a dry throat and the puppy panting heavily, Zeca recalled a small creek on the edge of the forest, closer to town. He changed their course, hoping it hadn't run dry. The trek to the creek was exhausting. The puppy collapsed several times, and Zeca had to repeatedly nudge it forward. Finally, they reached the stream. It was barely a trickle, but it was enough. Zeca lapped at the cool water, feeling it soothe his parched throat, while the puppy drank greedily, its whole body trembling. The water revived them, but it was only a temporary reprieve. As the afternoon wore on, the dense woods gave way to open fields. In the distance, Zeca could see the rooftops of houses and smell the faint scents of wood smoke and cooking food. Sensing the proximity of humans, the puppy began to whine and pull toward the town. Zeca grew more cautious, keenly aware of the new risks. He led the way along the edge of the field, using the tall grass for cover, the puppy stumbling along beside him. Suddenly, a car roared down a nearby road, its engine a deafening growl. The puppy yelped in terror and flattened itself against Zeca, who hissed, his fur standing on end. He nudged the puppy forward, urging it to hurry. They were almost there, just a few hundred yards from the first houses on the outskirts of Hopeville, but the puppy was faltering from exhaustion. Then Zeca spotted it, a small, unkempt garden behind one of the houses. It looked like a safe place to rest. He guided the puppy through a gap in the hedge, and together they settled into the tall grass, hidden from view. The trials they had faced had forged a fragile bond between them. Zeca, the hardened loner, was now the protector of a creature even more vulnerable than himself. In the late afternoon, the sun cast long shadows across the neglected garden. Zeca, tired but alert, meticulously groomed his fur while the puppy lay beside him, panting, its eyes half closed. The distant sounds of children playing and the gentle chime of a church bell drifted on the air. Zeca watched the neighboring houses, mostly older homes with peeling paint and worn porches. It was a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where life moved slowly. He knew hiding in the garden wasn't a solution. The puppy needed proper food and care. He had to risk venturing deeper into the town. He gave the puppy a gentle nudge, a silent command to stay put, then slipped back through the hedge and onto the pavement. He moved low to the ground, using the shadows as cover. Soon, he spotted a house with a vibrant flower garden. An elderly woman in a faded floral dress and a straw hat was kneeling among the blossoms, humming softly to herself. She seemed gentle, harmless. Continuing his patrol, Zeca saw another house with a dog bowl on the porch, but a large, loud dog chained in the yard sent him scurrying away. He considered a house with a cat flap, but the potent scent of a territorial male cat warned him off. Just as he was about to turn back, he heard the laughter of children and saw a group of them playing in a park across the street. A strange pang of longing hit him, a yearning for a carefree joy he had never known. Shaking off the feeling, he returned to the garden. The old woman with the flowers was their best chance. She seemed kind, her home quiet and safe. Zeca nudged the puppy again, encouraging it to follow. On shaky legs, the little dog struggled to its feet and limped through the hedge after him. Zeca led the puppy toward the house with the colorful garden, where the woman, Marta, was now tending to her roses. Spurred by some desperate instinct, the puppy began to whimper, a high, pleading sound as it hobbled toward her, its tail giving a weak wag. Startled by the noise, Marta looked up and saw the thin, forlorn puppy. Her face instantly softened. She set down her gardening tools, knelt, and spoke in a gentle, cooing voice. "Oh, hello there, little one. Where did you come from? You look so lost and hungry." At her feet, the puppy collapsed into a heap, whimpering softly. From the shadows of the hedge, Zeca watched, his part in this unlikely rescue mission finally complete. His amber eyes were fixed on the old woman. Though poised to flee at the slightest hint of danger, something told him this human was different. She was kind, and perhaps the best hope for them both. Marta gently scooped up the puppy, cradling him in her arms. She could feel the fragility of his bones beneath the matted fur, and her heart ached at his condition. She had always had a special place in her heart for animals, having cared for many strays over the years. "Oh, you poor thing," she murmured, stroking the puppy's head. "You're so thin. Let's get you inside and see what we can do." She carried him into her cozy home, an old cottage that smelled of lavender and freshly baked bread. The house was filled with antiques, furniture that had seen better days, and a large grandfather clock in the hallway. Marta gently placed the puppy on a soft rug in the living room, where he collapsed, exhausted, his eyes following her every move. Marta examined the puppy closely, noting the tangled fur, the ticks latched onto his skin, and the sores on his little paws. He was clearly a German shepherd, a beautiful breed, but he was in terrible shape. She guessed he was no more than 4 or 5 months old. She prepared a bowl of water and set it before him. He drank greedily, trembling from weakness. Next, she went to the kitchen, found some leftover chicken and rice, warmed it up, and offered it to him. He devoured it as if he hadn't eaten in days. While the puppy ate, Marta filled a basin with warm water and a bit of gentle pet shampoo. She carefully washed him, removing the dirt and the ticks. At first, the puppy whimpered, but he soon seemed to understand she only wanted to help, allowing her to tend to him. As she dried him with a soft towel, his tail gave a shy, tentative wag. It was then that Marta noticed a flicker of movement outside the living room window. A flash of ginger fur, a pair of amber eyes watching intently. It was a cat, a scruffy ginger stray. Marta recognized him. He would occasionally appear in her yard, but always kept a cautious distance. She suspected he too was an abandoned soul, like so many who roamed the village of Villa Esperanza. In an instant, Marta understood. The cat and the puppy were together. The cat had likely led the little dog to her home, seeking help. A wave of admiration washed over her. It was an extraordinary act of compassion, a reminder of the unexpected bonds that can form between souls in need. Marta went back to the kitchen, filled a small bowl with milk, and placed it on the porch as an invitation. She then returned to the living room, where the puppy was already fast asleep on the rug. She sat in her favorite armchair and watched the sleeping dog, a deep sense of contentment washing over her. Since her husband had passed away 5 years ago, the house had felt empty, devoid of his laughter and warmth. Caring for this puppy, and perhaps the cat too, filled a void Marta hadn't even realized was there. Still, she knew she couldn't keep the dog forever. Her age and frail health wouldn't allow it. But for now, she could offer a safe haven where he could recover. Looking out the window, Marta saw the cat on the edge of the porch, lapping up the milk. A smile touched her lips. She had a feeling this unlikely pair, the lost puppy and the streetwise cat, was about to change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The milk bowl was now empty, and Zeca, still on Marta's porch, was meticulously cleaning his whiskers. A sense of calm settled over him, knowing the puppy, whom he had started to call Toto, was safe, at least for now. Peeking through the living room window, Zeca saw Toto sleeping peacefully, looking much better, clean and relaxed. But the cat experienced a mix of feelings: satisfaction, a touch of pride, and a growing unease. He was a loner, accustomed to relying only on himself. This bond forming with Toto, and now with Marta, was unsettling. In the days that followed, a gentle routine began to form. Marta cared for Toto with absolute devotion. She fed him small, regular meals, gradually increasing the portions as he gained strength. She gave him deworming medicine, applied antiseptic cream to his paws, and took him for short, careful walks around the yard. Meanwhile, Zeca remained nearby, a silent observer from the cover of Marta's flowers and shrubs. He accepted the food Marta left out for him each morning and evening, a mix of dry kibble and canned tuna, a feast compared to the scraps he usually found. Slowly, he grew accustomed to Marta's presence, even allowing her to stroke his fur, though he still preferred the freedom of the outdoors. On the other side of the glass, Toto was thriving. His coat began to shine again, his eyes brightened, and he steadily gained weight. The playful energy of a typical puppy was returning. He followed Marta everywhere, his tail wagging constantly, and even tried to engage Zeca in play with excited yaps and pounces. The cat usually responded with a stern meow to maintain his distance. Even so, a special bond was forming. Toto would often rest beside the cat in the sun, leaning against his ginger fur. A closeness Zeca, though reluctant, began to accept. Marta watched their interactions with deep satisfaction, feeling she had brought two lost souls together and given them a temporary refuge. She posted notices at the local market, the post office, and the veterinary clinic, telling Toto's story in hopes that someone might recognize him. She contacted the animal shelter, but no one had reported a missing German Shepherd puppy. Marta knew Toto couldn't stay with her forever. She was too old to handle a large, energetic dog, and as the hope of finding his owners faded, she began to consider finding him a permanent home. One evening, as Marta sat on her porch watching Zeca and Toto in the yard, she felt a pang of sadness. She had grown attached to them both, especially Toto, and the thought of losing him was painful. But she knew what was best for him, and for Zeca too. She was certain that Zeca, despite his independent nature, would miss the puppy terribly. As Toto, in a burst of joy, chased a butterfly across the lawn, and Zeca watched from a distance, his eyes fixed on him, Marta smiled. This improbable friendship, born in the wilderness, had rekindled a spark of happiness in her quiet life, and she knew she would never forget these moments. A week later, Marta's grandson, Gabriel, came to visit. He was a tall young man with broad shoulders and a kind smile, his gentle eyes a reminder of his late grandfather. Gabriel lived on a small farm about an hour from the village, where he raised chickens and a few sheep. He often helped Marta with chores and kept her company. As soon as Gabriel walked into the living room, Toto scrambled to his feet and ran to him, tail wagging furiously. Gabriel laughed, crouching down. "Well, hello there, big guy. Where did you come from?" Marta told him the whole story of how Toto and Zeca had arrived at her door, describing their long journey and the hardships they had faced. Gabriel listened intently, his expression softening as he heard of their ordeal. He continued to pet Toto, who licked his face with infectious affection. "He's a beautiful dog, Grandma. A German Shepherd, right?" "Yeah. I've tried to find his owners, but no one has come forward. I think he was abandoned." Gabriel looked at Toto with compassion. He had always wanted a dog, but his busy farm schedule made it difficult. He spent the afternoon playing with Toto in the yard, throwing a ball and watching him run with pure joy, while Zeca watched from the flower beds, a hint of jealousy in his gaze as the sun began to set. Later, as Marta and Gabriel sat on the porch with iced tea and Toto rested at his feet, Marta took a deep breath and broached the subject that had been on her mind for days. "Gabriel, I've been thinking. I can't take care of Toto long term. He needs someone who can give him the attention and exercise he deserves. Would you consider taking him?" Gabriel seemed surprised but didn't dismiss the idea. He fondly stroked Toto's head. "I've always wanted a dog, Grandma, and I have plenty of space at the farm. He'd be great company, and he could even help watch over the animals." After a short pause, he added, "But what about you, Grandma? I know you've grown attached to him." Marta smiled sadly. "I have, but I know this is what's best for him, and I'll get to see him whenever you visit." Gabriel nodded in understanding and looked down at Toto, who gazed back with loving eyes. "All right, Grandma, I'll take him. I promise I'll give him a good home." Marta felt a mix of relief and sorrow. She knew it was the right decision, but it still hurt. The next morning, Gabriel prepared to leave with Toto. He brought a travel crate and placed it in the back of his pickup truck. He thanked Marta for everything and promised to visit often. Toto, sensing the shift, whimpered and looked from Marta to Zeca, who was watching from the porch. Though Zeca showed little emotion, Marta thought she saw a flicker of sadness in his amber eyes. Gabriel gently coaxed Toto into the crate. As the puppy settled down, he kept his eyes on Zeca. When the truck started to move, Toto let out a soft bark, as if saying goodbye. Zeca didn't move. He just stood there, watching the truck pull away. He remained until the pickup disappeared around the bend, its engine fading into the distance. A profound silence settled over Marta's yard. The absence of Toto's playful energy was felt by everyone. Marta put an arm around Zeca, feeling a slight tremor in his body. "He'll be okay, Zeca," she murmured. "He's going to a good home, and we'll see him again." Zeca looked up, his eyes reflecting a complex mix of emotions. He didn't purr or lean into her, but he didn't pull away either. He just stood there, accepting her comfort, acknowledging the loss they both felt. This new chapter for Toto marked the end of a brief but meaningful friendship. The yard felt strange without Toto's vibrant energy. His playful barks and clumsy pounces were replaced by a heavy quiet that settled over Zeca. He roamed through the flower beds, sniffing the places where Toto used to roll and dig. The scents were fading, but the memories remained sharp and vivid. He went to the porch where his bowl of tuna was always waiting, but his appetite was gone. After a few bites, he simply sat, staring at the empty street. He missed the warmth of Toto's body pressed against his, the clumsy games, and the shared moments of their long journey through the woods. Zeca had always been proud of his independence. He had never allowed himself to get attached. But Toto had broken through his defenses, leaving a void that ached more than he had expected. Later, Marta came out to the porch with a cup of tea and sat beside him, stroking his fur gently. She understood his sadness. She felt Toto's absence deeply herself. The house seemed quieter, emptier, even after so many years of living alone since her husband passed. "He's going to be fine, Zeca," Marta said softly. "Gabriel will take wonderful care of him. There's so much space to run and play on the farm." Zeca looked up, his amber eyes filled with a silent question. Though he didn't understand the words, he felt the comfort in her tone. He leaned into her touch, a rare gesture of affection. After a moment, he hopped off the porch and slipped into the shade of the bushes without a backward glance. He made his way to the park at the edge of the village, the same place where he had found Toto, lost and terrified. The clearing was quiet now, the scent of cooked meat replaced by the familiar smell of pine and damp earth. Zeca resumed his patrols, marking his territory, reasserting his authority. He hunted, catching a mouse and a small bird to sate his hunger, but the emptiness inside remained. He often found himself returning to the spot where he and Toto had first emerged, watching the sun gleam off the distant city. He would sit there for long moments, looking back toward Villa Esperanza and Marta's house, knowing he could always return to that welcoming home for food and shelter. But something held him back. He was a wanderer, a survivor who had learned to trust only himself. He couldn't go back to being dependent, not even on someone as kind as Marta. His experience with Toto had changed him. He had learned about compassion, about connection, and about the bittersweet ache of loss. He was no longer the indifferent cat who scavenged the city for scraps. He had tasted the sweetness of friendship, and that memory would stay with him forever. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows between the trees, Zeca turned from the city and retreated to the forest, to the solitary comfort of the life he knew. And though he was alone again, he was not the same. He carried with him the memories of Toto, of Marta, and of the kindness he had found. Memories that would follow him like a gentle sorrow, a reminder of the unexpected bonds that can form in the most unlikely of circumstances. He continued to forage for food and live his solitary life, but now with a heart that had been touched, however briefly, by the warmth of friendship and the sting of loss.